from Alma Angeles, we're moving to the next stage of the pandemic, and as the world resets to the new normal, we find ourselves seeking the right balance between health and livelihood, constantly adjusting the boundaries between liberty and responsibility. On tonight's headlines. Malacanang said that the new record high of 30.7% hunger incidence among Filipino families from July to September this year was a sad development, but it's only temporary. The COVID-19 pandemic has disputed or halted critical mental health services in 93% of countries worldwide, while the demand for mental health is increasing, according to a new WHO survey. The head of the World Health Organization is offering a glimmer of hope, though, saying we may have a vaccine by the end of the year. Eddie Van Halen, the guitar virtuoso, whose group is considered one of the greatest rock bands of all time, died on Tuesday following a long battle with cancer. Malacanang said that the new record high of 30.7% hunger incidence among Filipino families from July to September this year was a sad development, but it's only temporary. Palace spokesperson Harry Roque attributed this new record high of hunger incidence in the country was due to the lockdown and community quarantine protocols implemented by the government to prevent the further spread of the coronavirus in the past few months. Let's listen in.
Tumaas po talaga ang pagkagutom, tumaas po yung malnourishment ng ating mga kabataan. At ito po ang dahilan niya kung bakit hinikayat nga po niya ang buong gobyerno na buksan palalo ang ating ekonomiya at importante na bigyan ng katugunan yung kawalan ng transportasyon. At ito pong dahilan kung bakit nagpatawag po ang presidente ng full cabinet meeting sa susunod na Lunes po, alas 4 ng hapon, para i-discuss pa po itong mga opsyon para lalo pambuksan ng ekonomiya at bigyan ng kasagutan yung kawalan ng transportasyon.
Now, the COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted or halted critical mental health services in 93% of countries worldwide, while the demand for mental health is increasing, according to a new WHO survey. Now, the survey of 130 countries provides the first global data showing the devastating impact of COVID-19 on access to mental health services and underscores the urgent need for increased funding. Take a look.
The main findings were that 89% of countries have mental health and psychosocial support plans as part of the COVID-19 plan, but only 17% of them have funding to implement the activities. It is important then that countries ensure proper investment to the mental health and psychosocial plans that are already available in order to make services ready to answer to the need of the population. We know that there are direct and indirect consequences of the COVID-19 in the mental health of the population of countries affected by the pandemic, and we expect the demand to increase for care of people with mental, neurological and substance use disorders. We are then concerned that services should be available to answer to the needs of those people.
Bereavement, isolation, loss of income and fear are triggering mental health conditions or exacerbating existing ones. Many people may be facing increased levels of alcohol and drug use, insomnia, and anxiety. Meanwhile, COVID-19 itself can lead to neurological and mental health complications such as delirium, agitation, and even stroke. People with pre-existing mental, neurological, or substance use disorders are also more vulnerable to the coronavirus infection. They may stand a higher risk of severe outcomes and even death. The UN refugee chief said that he had tested positive for COVID-19 after leading the first day of the agency's main annual meeting in person. Filippo Grandi, who kicked off UNHCR's week-long executive committee meeting in Geneva on Monday, told participants via video link that he would need to continue following the event from home. He said, "I am engaging with UNHCR's executive committee from home as I have to isolate after testing positive to #COVID-19. He said this in a tweet. "I only have mild symptoms and hope to recover soon," he added. Grandi had addressed delegates from the podium in the UN Assembly Hall in Geneva on the first day of the event, but participated remotely on Tuesday. UNHCR's executive committee is for the first time being held as a hybrid event this year due to the coronavirus pandemic. Meanwhile, the head of the World Health Organization is offering a glimmer of hope. Let's take a listen.
The most important thing now is investing in or using all the tools at hand. And many countries have shown that with the tools we have, they were able to suppress and control the pandemic. But at the same time, we have to invest in new technology, and that's why we launched the ACT Accelerator. We will need vaccines, and there is hope that by the end of this year, we may have a vaccine.
9 experimental vaccines are in the pipeline of the WHO-led COVAX Global Vaccine Facility. More than 60 wealthy nations have joined the WHO-backed program to facilitate poor countries' access to coronavirus vaccines. Meanwhile, President Trump is working overtime to persuade voters that he's back to full strength despite the hospitalization. Take a look. "Feeling great," he tweeted, also insisting that he is looking forward to holding a second scheduled debate against Joe Biden in Miami on October 15. And in a medical bulletin, the presidential doctor said Trump reports no symptoms and continues to do extremely well. However, indicating the breadth of the coronavirus crisis overshadowing President Trump politically and now personally, a viral outbreak continues to sweep through his inner circle. Take a look. Top White House aide Stephen Miller confirmed that he had tested positive for COVID-19 and was in quarantine. U.S. media also reported that a military aide responsible for carrying the nuclear football, a briefcase containing information for the president to launch a nuclear attack while traveling, tested positive for coronavirus over the weekend. The aide had traveled with President Trump to New Jersey on Thursday. And General Mark Milley, chairman of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, is self-quarantining after contact with a Coast Guard officer who tested positive for COVID-19, according to a military source. Pentagon spokesman Jonathan Hoffman said, out of an abundance of caution, all potential close contacts from these meetings are self-quarantining. The Pentagon said a number of senior U.S. military officers were self-quarantining after attending meetings last week with the Coast Guard's Vice Commandant, Admiral Charles Ray. Now, the Coast Guard said Ray had tested positive on Monday after experiencing mild symptoms and was quarantining at home. Hoffman stressed that there has been no change to the operational readiness or mission capability of the U.S. Armed Forces. Meanwhile, Democrat Joe Biden said Tuesday he would be opposed to debating Donald Trump next week as scheduled if the U.S. president is still sick with COVID-19, saying he would want to follow health guidelines. The men are scheduled to square off again on October 15, but Mr. Biden said if he still has COVID, we shouldn't have a debate. President Trump, 74 years old, announced early Friday, 2 days after his first debate with Biden in Cleveland, that he had tested positive for the virus. President Trump has given no indication he would bow out due to his health, saying in a tweet that he is looking forward to the next debate. To Australia now, Morgan Goodfellow from our EBC Queensland Bureau joins us live. Hello, Morgan.
Good evening, Alma.
Hi. So, e-scooters have been deployed for local transport in your area. Can you tell us more about this?
Yeah, so as of the 26th of September, 250 bright orange Neuron e-scooters have been placed around Townsville's central business district and Strand areas, covering kilometres of sightseeing and adventure for locals and tourists alike. Townsville is the second city in Queensland, joining Brisbane to take part in Neuron's innovative idea of e-scooters. In Brisbane, within only 2 weeks of having their share of the mobility e-scooters, they were able to accumulate 50,000 trips. Having the e-scooters in Townsville's central business district will provide a very accessible transport option to attractions on the Strand, to the beautiful beaches along Pallaranda, moving through the nightlife of Palmer Street and to the recently built Queensland Country Bank Stadium. Townsville's Mayor Jenny Hill has expressed that the local police department have learnt lessons from other districts in addressing foreseeable crimes and will impose strict and considerable actions for any unlawfulness that are bound to happen. Booking by their application Neuron e-scooter sharing via the App Store or Google Play, locals and tourists are able to enjoy these mobility scooters to take them and their families out for an afternoon stroll or an early morning boardwalk. The scooters are rented and purposely built for safety, with state-of-the-art features such as controlled helmet lock, geofencing control, a 000 emergency button, voice guidance, topple detection, and a follow my ride function. It costs $1 to unlock and will accumulate a further 38 cents for every minute used. There is also a subscription service that can be purchased called Neuron Passes for frequent riders, offering a 3-day pass for $25, a weekly pass for $33, or a monthly pass for $89. Users will only be able to use the scooters for a maximum of 90 minutes per day. To ensure COVID safety, the company providing the Neuron e-scooter has been asked to make sure the equipment along with the scooter itself are regularly cleaned and that usage of their scooters are tracked to record contact tracing, complying with Queensland Government Health Department policy. Reporting from Townsville, Australia, Eagle News, Morgan Goodfellow. We live in interesting times.
Yes. Hello, Morgan. Can I just ask you something about the scooters? These e-scooters, how is this helping during this time of the pandemic?
It's allowing people to kind of, I guess, congregate again without being too close to each other. It's a new form of fun, I guess, you know.
And how about, so this is a sharing app. Are there any concerns about, because in some countries there were concerns about tracing app, about the infringement on privacy. Are there any concerns about that at all with these e-scooters, with the collection of data from the sharing app?
Not that I've heard of, no, so I'm not 100% sure on that one.
All right. Okay, so looking forward to more updates there in Australia. Thank you so much, Morgan.
Thank you, Alma.
Okay. Britain's health minister on Monday blamed out-of-date software for the fact that almost 16,000 positive coronavirus tests went missing from official figures. Janelle Ann Kasuga joins us or reports from the United Kingdom Bureau.
Britain's health minister on Monday blamed out-of-date software for the fact that almost 16,000 positive coronavirus tests went missing from official figures, and admitted it had affected contact tracing efforts. Matt Hancock said the legacy computer system at the Public Health England (PHE) agency that processed lab results caused 15,841 cases between September 25th and October 2nd to be absent from reported daily case numbers. Our assessment of the disease and its impact has not substantially changed as a result of this data, he insisted, adding that everyone who tested positively received their results as normal. But he conceded the glitch disrupted the government's test and trace program, which aimed to find close contacts of coronavirus sufferers to ensure they self-isolate. A catch-up effort after the fault was reported on Friday night had so far contacted 51% of those cases, he told the House of Commons. This incident should never have happened, but the team has acted swiftly to minimize its impact, he said. However, John Ashworth, from the main opposition Labour Party said it was just the latest sign that the tracing system Prime Minister Boris Johnson promised would be world-beating was not up to the task. This isn't just a shambles, it's putting lives at risk, he said. Sunday's official coronavirus numbers showed 22,961 new positive cases, a rise of more than 10,000 on Saturday's figures, bringing the total to more than 500,000. More than 42,000 people confirmed to have COVID-19 have died in Britain, the worst toll in Europe. Reporting from London, United Kingdom, I'm Janelle Kasuga. We live in interesting times.
Thank you, Janelle. Eagle News will be right back.
Noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
President Trump called off talks on a new stimulus plan to boost the COVID-ravaged U.S. economy until after the election. Take a look. In a tweet, he said Nancy Pelosi is asking for $2.4 trillion to bail out poorly run, high-crime Democrat states. Money that is in no way related to COVID-19, Trump tweeted, citing an incorrect figure for the Democrats' latest proposal. We made a very generous offer of $1.6 trillion, and as usual, she's not negotiating in good faith. I am rejecting their request and looking to the future of our country. He added that after the election, which he said he would win, we will pass a major stimulus bill that focuses on hardworking Americans and small business. President Trump accused the Democratic House leader of negotiating in bad faith and said he had asked Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell to instead focus on confirming his appointed judge to an opening on the Supreme Court. The afternoon tweet undid optimism that had developed in recent days after House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin resumed talks on a follow-up measure to the $2.2 trillion CARES Act passed to blunt the coronavirus downturn. But President Trump later struck a more conciliatory tone that night, tweeting he would immediately sign a congressional bill guaranteeing a second round of $1,200 of stimulus checks and $135 billion for small businesses, two elements that were already included in the negotiations. In other business news, IMF Chief Kristalina Georgieva said the global economic downturn caused by the coronavirus pandemic will be less severe than originally feared. In a virtual event hosted by London School of Economics to celebrate its 125th anniversary, she, however, said all countries are facing the long ascent, a difficult climb that will be long, uneven, and uncertain. Take a look.
The IMF in June projected a severe global GDP contraction in 2020. The picture today is less dire. We now estimate that the second quarter downturn was somewhat less severe than expected, allowing for a small upward revision in our global forecast for 2020. And we will continue to project for 2021 a painful and uneven recovery. Risks remain high, including from rising bankruptcies and sketched valuations in financial markets. And many countries have become more vulnerable. Their debt levels have increased because of their fiscal response to the crisis and the heavy output and revenue losses. We estimate that global public debt will reach a record high of about 100% of GDP in 2020. Where the pandemic persists, it is critical to maintain lifelines across the economy to firms and to workers, such as tax deferrals, credit guarantees, cash transfers, wage subsidies. Equally important is continued monetary accommodation and liquidity measures to ensure the flow of credit, especially to small and medium-sized firms, supporting jobs and supporting financial stability. Cut the lifelines too soon, and the long ascent becomes a precipitous fall.
The World Trade Organization likewise said that the devastation of global trade during the pandemic will not be as bad as originally forecast, contracting by just 9.2% this year rather than the 12.9%. Let's listen in.
I think WTO is now projecting a 9.2% fall in the volume of world merchandise trade in 2020. Followed by a 7.2% rise in 2021, leaving trade well below its pre-pandemic trend.
Global merchandise trade decline recorded in the second quarter of 14.3% is the largest quarter-on-quarter drop recorded in our time series going back to 2005. So this was a very sharp decline in trade.
We think there's reason for optimism on the trade front with a smaller than expected decline. Fall and winter holds a lot of uncertainty. Asian exports have been strong, but for those exports to be sustained, you need strong demand in the importing countries such as the US and EU. But we don't know how strong consumption demand will remain should the virus resurge and should governments not be able to continue sustained fiscal support.
Now, the WTO said that rapid deployment of an effective vaccine against the virus could boost confidence and raise output growth by 1 to 2 percentage points in 2021. Now, home prices are rising even as the pandemic continues to sweep across New Zealand. Greg Bessa reports.
While the economic impact of the coronavirus pandemic became evident during the first 2 quarters of this year, many experts predicted that this would lead to the crashing of the housing market in New Zealand. Yet, as the coronavirus crisis continues to evolve for the past 7 months now, housing prices are not slowing down, not only in Lower Hutt, the 7th largest city in New Zealand, but also in different places across the country. Ray Wallace, a real estate agent, gives us a brief insight behind this upward house pricing. Contrary to what many experts have predicted that the pandemic would crush the New Zealand market, the housing prices, not only here in Lower Hutt, but as well as in other parts of the country, are constantly increasing despite of the health and economic crisis that we're confronting right now. Now, why is it happening, and what do you think are the contributing factors behind this upward pricing trend?
Why it's happening comes down to the simple supply and demand. The supply of properties are simply not there, and I think that has been contributed by a lot of the experts saying that things were going to probably get worse when they haven't. I think that sort of talk hasn't been helpful. I didn't believe that for a moment. I think that the market will stay steady. The property market is one of the best investments people can have. You see massive fluctuations in share prices. The banks obviously not giving as much in the way of interest on their accounts now. Property is a stable investment. So what it has caused, though, people to be a bit concerned about the economy in general with these sorts of statements. People that were going to be listing their properties are now holding back. So it's supply and demand. The demand is very high. Prior to COVID, Greg, we went in to COVID in a housing crisis. Coming out of the COVID lockdown period, we're still in a housing crisis. So the demand is very high, but the supply is not there. And when that happens, it means that the prices go up because there's a lot more people looking for homes and a lot more homes available on the market.
Despite the economic consequences caused by the pandemic, there are Filipino families who are fortunate enough to own and acquire their first home, one of whom is the family of Noli and Berna Pascual.
Na ng pandemic, sa wakas nakabili na po na rin kami ng bahay dito sa New Zealand.
Opo, kami po sa amin kami po ay blessed, very na kami ay nakakuha na ng bahay dito in spite po ng kahirapan. At saka we work hard for it po na makakuha kami ng sarili na naming bahay dito kaysa po mag-rent. So kami po ay lubos na nagpapasalamat kahit na may pandemic, kami po ay nakakuha pa rin dito na masasabing sa amin na po ang bahay.
From Wainumatta, Lower Hutt, this is Greg Besa of Eagle News New Zealand Bureau. We live in interesting times.
Thanks, Greg. The IMF warned Mexico faces a years-long struggle to return to pre-pandemic levels of employment, income, and poverty after an expected economic contraction of 9.0% this year. The International Monetary Fund urged the Mexican authorities to do more to boost Latin America's second-largest economy with fiscal and monetary stimulus. The fund said the government should implement a comprehensive package of near-term fiscal and monetary stimulus and credible medium-term reforms to boost investment and growth. President Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador has refrained from major fiscal stimulus to boost the economy, saying he wants to avoid saddling the country with huge debts. The left-wing populist says his priority is helping ordinary Mexicans with social aid and loans. The Mexican economy suffered a record 17.1% contraction in the second quarter of the year from the previous quarter. The central bank warned last month that the Mexican economy is in danger of shrinking by 12.8% for the whole of 2020 if the pandemic worsens. In other business news, the real-life Super Mario game where players jump to collect coins and a Mario Kart ride will open next spring at Universal Studios Japan as gaming giant Nintendo makes its first foray into theme parks. The new area of the amusement park in the western city of Osaka was originally planned to open in July this year ahead of the Tokyo Olympics with huge droves of tourists expected. But the long-awaited Super Nintendo World Zone, which also features a ride based on the beloved green dinosaur Yoshi, will now open in spring of 2021, according to the park in a statement on Wednesday. It'll offer interactive attractions where guests can jump and hit blocks to collect coins and items, according to the park, without elaborating on how this would work. The opening was delayed as Japan imposed social distancing measures earlier this year to curb the spread of the virus. Apple scheduled a media event for October 13 amid expectations it would unveil one or more new iPhones which use ultra-fast 5G wireless technology. The event comes a month after Apple disappointed some fans with a September event which unveiled new service bundles but no new smartphone. Apple, which has habitually unveiled new iPhones ahead of the holiday season, has said supply chain disruptions due to the pandemic have delayed its plans for product launches by several weeks. A notice posted on Apple's website offered no specific clues but included the message high speed in an apparent reference to the faster wireless networks being introduced in many parts of the world. The news comes after Google unveiled two new smartphones with 5G wireless capability under its Pixel brand, which showcases the Android mobile system but has limited market share. Google's Pixel handsets have won positive reviews for their powerful cameras and integrated artificial intelligence, but have failed to crack the top ranks of the smartphone market, dominated by the likes of South Korea's Samsung, Apple, and China's Huawei. Total smartphone sales were down 16% in the second quarter, according to research firm IDC, whose survey showed Huawei leading the market ahead of Samsung, Apple, and Chinese firms Xiaomi and Oppo. Eagle News will be right back.
Digital disruption, globalization. Startups, micro, small, and medium enterprises, as well as large corporations, all face interesting challenges in the market today. Peek into the world of exciting opportunities and partnerships to drive growth with the latest business news and information. We are open for business. Join the conversations to create a more vibrant environment for entrepreneurship. Catch Open for Business every Saturday from 5 to 6 p.m. Open for Business, from vision to action.
Events happen around us all the time, in our community, in our country, around the world. Events that affect people, move communities, or simply inspire us. Interesting events that people need to know. In these interesting times, we continue to be a competent partner in delivering news about these events. Fast, accurate, balanced. Eagle News, because we live in interesting times.
Let's check out the other stories making headlines around the world. Hurricane Delta churned towards Mexico's Caribbean coast on Wednesday as thousands of tourists hunkered down in emergency shelters in a string of major beach resorts. Take a look. Now, the hurricane weakened to Category 3 as it approached the Yucatan Peninsula, but still threatened to bring strong winds and a life-threatening storm surge, according to the U.S. National Hurricane Center. Earlier, the hurricane exploded from Category 2 to Category 4 storm in 2 hours. Now, by nightfall, Cancun streets were mostly empty, with shops closed and windows covered by wooden sheets or crossed with adhesive tape to try to prevent them from shattering. More than 40,000 tourists in Cancun and neighboring resorts were evacuated, according to the head of the area's hotel association, Roberto Citron. Most were Mexicans, but they also included foreigners, notably from the United States. In Cancun alone, more than 160 shelters were set up. The authorities said the emergency shelters had been sanitized to prevent the spread of the coronavirus, which has killed more than 81,000 people in Mexico and battered the key tourism industry. Meanwhile, our Texas Bureau Chief Jane Kathleen Gregorio, who's supposed to be on a romantic wedding anniversary with or getaway with her husband in Cancun, Mexico, now finds herself sheltering with the other guests in the hotel's convention room as Hurricane Delta takes aim at where they are now. She talked to some of the guests. Kathleen.
I'm here today in Cancun, Mexico, where we have just received reports from the National Hurricane Center regarding Hurricane Delta, which has rapidly intensified to a Category 4 with 140 miles per hour winds currently aimed at the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. Meanwhile, here in Cancun, many resorts are taking precautions for their guest safety by arranging earlier checkouts and flight changes. And for those not able to leave, furnishing evacuation and hurricane refuge areas. We're here right now in Atelier Hotel Resort, and as you can see behind me, the clouds have started to accumulate. It has been very overcast for the past few hours, and we still have a few tourists struggling. However, all of the guests here in this resort area have been asked to meet in the lobby to be transported to the evacuation center.
Right now, Delta, it is category number 4. It is a really dangerous hurricane, but we have a shelter here, a pretty safe shelter here. And the good thing of it is that Delta is going really fast, and probably the winds and then the rain, the hard rain, is going to be only for 3 hours.
Okay, so what will happen tomorrow when the hurricane passes, if everything is okay?
Okay, the next thing to do, once the hurricane goes away from this area, we have to take a look at the hotel and evaluate all the rooms and all the facilities to see if we are able to go back to our places, or if we have to place you in a plane back to your country. And this is a result of a lot of experience, because we've been living in this area with many experiences like this. So I know we are going to be good. We did all in order to be good, and suddenly tomorrow we are going to be laughing at this.
This is the most secure area because there's no windows. So they set this up, and they're doing some barricading so that we basically have a place, and the reason we're all out of the rooms is because the glass will break in some of the rooms. About 160 miles an hour wind, and they found this out in Florida, will put a 2x4 through a piece of plywood. So it actually takes 2 3/4-inch pieces of plywood in a full Category 5 storm or a tornado to keep a 2x4 from going through. I mean, this is a real radical, high-speed event, very dangerous.
Meanwhile, Hurricane Delta is expected to make landfall in Cancun at 8 a.m. Wednesday en route to the U.S. Gulf Coast, and is one of the biggest hurricanes expected to impact Cancun since Hurricane Wilma 15 years ago. Stay tuned to Eagle News for further updates. In Cancun, Mexico, I'm Jane Kathleen Gregorio, Eagle News. We live in interesting times. Back to you in the studios.
In other news, police and anti-fascist demonstrators clashed in Athens on the sidelines of a large protest of some 15,000 people after a court branded Greece's neo-Nazi party, Golden Dawn, a criminal organization. Greece's neo-Nazi party, Golden Dawn, was branded a criminal organization on Wednesday, its leaders now facing heavy sentences in one of the most important trials in the country's political history. The judgment came as police and anti-fascist demonstrators clashed outside the courthouse on the sidelines of the large protest of some 15,000 people. Reading out the verdict in a trial that took place over 5 years, presiding Judge Maria Lepeniotti said Golden Dawn founder and leader Nikos Michalioliakos and other senior members were guilty of running a criminal organization, and among those convicted is independent Eurodeputee Yanis Lagos, who defected from the party last year, the party's former spokesman Ilias Kasidiaris, and a dozen other senior party members elected to parliament in 2012 at the height of the Golden Dawn's influence. None of the party's senior members were present in court. Michalioliakos and other senior cadres convicted on the criminal organization charge face jail sentences of between 5 and 15 years. The sentences are to be announced in separate hearings. The prosecutions were sparked by the late-night murder of 34-year-old anti-fascist rapper Pavlos visas in September of 2013. He was chased down by a mob of Golden Dawn thugs and stabbed to death in front of a cafe in the western Athens suburb of Quezon City. Thousands of Indonesian workers protested against a controversial new law which critics fear will favor investors at the expense of labor rights and the environment. Take a look. Now, labor activists and environmentalists have formed an unlikely alliance against the legislation, which was passed in Parliament late Monday after being promoted by the government as key to attracting investment. Human rights group Amnesty International called it catastrophic for workers, saying it would harm livelihoods and job security. Phelim Kine, an official with the Mighty Earth Environmental Group, said it would legitimize uncontrolled deforestation. The government hopes the bill, which aims to cut red tape by amending dozens of existing laws covering taxation, labor, and environment regulations, will attract foreign investment. Although enforcement is sometimes patchy, Indonesia has tough labor laws, particularly involving foreign companies. Indonesia is facing a looming recession, with the economy shrinking 5.32% in the second quarter this year due to the coronavirus pandemic. More than 11,000 people have died so far, with at least 300,000 infected. Eddie Van Halen, the guitar virtuoso, whose group is considered one of the greatest rock bands of all time, died on Tuesday following a long battle with cancer. I can't believe I'm having to write this, but my father, Edward Ludwig Van Halen, has lost his long and arduous battle with cancer this morning. Wolf Van Halen wrote in a message on Twitter with a picture of the rocker who was 65 years old. He was the best father I could ever ask for, he added. Every moment I've shared with him on and off stage was a gift. My heart is broken and I don't think I'll ever fully recover from this loss. I love you so much, Pop. Born in the Netherlands and raised in California, Van Halen founded the rock group with his older brother Alex in the early 1970s and quickly earned a fan base. He was famous for what became known as finger tapping, playing the guitar with two hands like a piano. He was also known for his guitars, including one named Frankenstein, which he pieced together from part of other instruments. Among the group's classics are Jump, Panama, Run-In with the Devil, and the guitar solo Eruption. remains so much more to be grateful for. See you again tomorrow evening. Good night. I'm Alma Angeles. We live in interesting times.